Today, I want to talk about why men are going their own way. Why a lot of men are abandoning their families or abandoning trying to date or relationships. Why community is failing and patriotism or shared social bonds are getting destroyed. It comes down to ownership. Now, I might be canceled for this video, but hear me out. If a man doesn't feel ownership in the land, in his family, in his tribe or village, he will not be inspired to accept responsibility for that thing. For instance, if I was starting a business and I wanted someone to be an A player for me, someone to be high up in the business, to be a great leader, to really help the business flourish, what would I do? I would give them a ownership role. I would give them a share of the company, right? It's the same thing in society. If you want participants, really good citizens, if you want men to overcome their lower nature and rise to truly masculine and beautiful men and leaders, you need to give them ownership, or else they're gonna say fuck it. So the main impulse within most men is towards freedom. We don't want to be tied down to all of these obligations and responsibilities to our village, to the nation, to our job, to our family. Like, we just want to wander freely, right? A lot of men do. And society and cultures in the ancient world coped with this will towards freedom within men by offering them ownership, by offering them authority. And this ownership is what created citizens. And this is really important. This is what my last video is about. Bear with me if you're feeling triggered. Citizenship is when you own a long-term stake within a larger project, right? So let's say you're in a village, okay? And you own a piece of land in that village, and your kids are probably going to inherit that piece of land. And on top of that, you feel like you have great ownership of your family. You're more of the patriarch of your family. Therefore, how are you going to treat your family and how are you going to treat the land?
Much better.
A lot of modern people will be like, oh, he's going to abuse them and all these things. It's like, no, that's the exception to the rule. The main rule would be you would try to see that whole thing flourish. A father generally wants to see the best for their kids. A father who owns the land is going to pass it down generations, wants to see the best of that land, is probably going to build it up in some way. And on top of that, you are going to want the best for your community. You're going
to care more about the laws. You're going to care more about the community. You're going to be more involved in the community. You're going to have more stake in going to create community. You're going to want to go meet your neighbors because you know y'all all in this together. Part of the problem with the suburbs is most of the people don't even own the homes. So why would they go out of their way to go meet their neighbors and build this base here when they could be gone next year or 2 years from now? But when you say, hey, we're going to be here for the next 20 years, we're all in this together. You're more likely to build that community, do potlucks where y'all all get together and come together and get to know each other's names so y'all can protect that community. You're less likely to allow crime to go rampant in your community because you know each other. These are all things that have been stripped from people because they don't have ownership. Absolutely, that is important. That is absolutely important. He's 100% right in this.
and participate in governance. You're going to try to be a good citizen to your neighbors. You're going to build community and build relationships because it's meaningful to you, because you have a long-term stake in the whole, right? When you take away the man's role at the head of the family, or you take away the man's role in terms of private land ownership, right? You take away his sense of having a long-term stake in something. Therefore, his nurturing, he doesn't feel inspired to take responsibility for it because it has less meaning for him, okay? Now, I'm not trying to advocate for, maybe outdated and roles of masculinity. I'm just trying to paint a picture of human nature for people out there.
Yeah, but he is advocating for old school roles of masculinity. Taking responsibility is an old school role of masculinity. But the only issue is, and this is why they want to undermine the family unit, men aren't going to want to take responsibility of something that they don't have any authority over. And that's why the government gets involved in your marriage. So now even your own marriage, the thing that you build your entire life on, isn't even sustainable. It's based off the whims of a woman who can control it at any moment. She could take away your kids. She could take away half of everything you own. And the government that you pay taxes to will help her do it. And men understand that. So the reason why men aren't getting married as much, and the reason why men have less invested into their societies, the reason why men are dropping out of college, the reason why the unemployment rate for young men is at an all-time high, the reason why young men don't want to go to war to fight for feminism and LGBTQ is because they don't even have a family. They don't have an investment into it. Yeah, so he's absolutely right. Absolutely right. They take away the authority because they know if a man doesn't have the authority in his house, he's going to be less likely to even get married in the first place and assume the responsibility. They know that men who are responsible are going to make better decisions. We make better decisions when we understand that our decisions affect the people around us. When it's just us as men, let's just be honest, we willing to crash out. We do dumb shit all the time when it's just us. But when you know you have a little one at the house, when you know you have a wife to come home to, you're going to fight harder. Men are willing to die for their responsibilities in a way that women are not. That's why your authority is being undermined, because they don't want you to assume the responsibility. And I can't, in this current moment in society, how the laws are set up, I can't even blame men for refusing to accept their responsibility, especially considering the fact that it can be taken away from them at any moment. Let's just be honest. So yeah, that's why they attack your authority, because they don't want you to assume responsibility, because responsible men are willing to stand and die and negotiate harder for the things that they love. That's just the fact.
Is that when people feel like they have ownership in something, they're going to take responsibility in that thing because it has meaning for them. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about this politically and geopolitically in terms of democracy versus monarchy. Man, we're going heretical in this video, aren't we? Deep. Drop a like if you like this kind of content. So, the Middle Ages saw a lot of monarchies, kingdoms, and aristocracies, right? And there's been a massive wave of propaganda in the past 100 years from liberal democracy saying that the Middle Ages were all dark and kings were like these conniving, greedy, fat fools who were just in it for themselves. And this is not true. You can go see Thinking West, a YouTuber's video on this. But the monarchies of the past, in general, tended to be okay, if not good. Of course, there was bad kings and bad ones, just like there's bad men, right. Okay? But in that, the patriarch, the monarch, the king, he feels ownership for his entire kingdom, meaning that he is thinking generations ahead because he wants his kingdom to thrive. He's not going to overtax the peasants because he wants them to be more productive, to have better lives, so they multiply and increase the will to power of the entire kingdom. You see, the main instinct of life is to increase the feeling of power in life. And this is a very Nietzschean philosophy. And the feeling of power has nothing to do with control. It has everything to do with vitality, an increased feeling of life and expansiveness here on earth, a mastery of open space. And so the king is going to be thinking, a good king is thinking generations ahead. He's trying to, how can my people be more productive and live happier lives so they multiply and increase the power of the nation, right? And he's thinking this way because he wants to pass down this kingdom to his children, right, who he also feels to be a part of himself, right? Therefore, he has all of this meaning to lead well, to lead his family well, to lead his tribe well, to lead his kingdom well. Contrast that with a president. A president is in office for 4 to 8 years, and it's a popularity vote to get him in there. Yeah. And therefore, he's not thinking generations ahead. He is thinking, how can I gain popularity in the next 4 years so that people will reelect me, right?
Absolutely.
What's he going to do? He's going to drive the nation like a rental, right, and make decisions that might be good in the short term, but are detrimental in the long term. It's kind of like if you rent a property versus you own the property. If you own the property, you're going to cultivate the land. You're going to cultivate relationships. You're going to help it blossom, and you're going to think really far into the future, generations ahead. If you rent the land, you're not going to give a fuck. Okay, you're not going to give a shit about making it better. Yep. Oh, I'm only going to be here for 4 years. I'm going to drive it like a rental. I'm going to abuse this.
And he's absolutely right. And I don't want to get too political, and y'all probably know more about this than me because More y'all probably more political than me. But this happened when the 2022 virus happened. Trump started giving out checks because he knew that it was at the end of his presidency and he wanted to be reelected. Biden's doing the same thing. He's doing a very similar thing when he's trying to manipulate what it means to be in a recession so that we don't consider it to be a recession, but we still got to deal with the elephant in the room. The only issue is they know all I need is to convince enough people for me to get into office and have this power for the next years, and I'm gone. I'm off to be a millionaire. These people aren't even supposed to be, they're not supposed to be millionaires. They get into those offices, the payment's only like $250,000 a month. And they come out worth $20 million. How is that so? It's because they're selling out and all they want is the power. But he's absolutely right. And it's because they don't have an invested interest into making something with longevity. It's all about the now. It's all about just getting the next votes. What do I have to say? What do I have to do to get the next vote from the next group of stupid people? That's all politics is, especially in America. It's manipulating the most stupid people as possible. And that's on both sides. Sorry to say it. I know that's a bitter pill to swallow. Sorry to say it. That's just my opinion, though.
Pump money into the economy. I'm going to exploit the land as much as possible to, gain prestige for myself and maybe short-term gain for the whole, but to the long-term detriment.
And to long-term detriment. And I wanted to say one more thing. I'm sorry. And you can see the proof that the government isn't working for the people by looking at who has more rights and exemptions. Looking for taxes. Who has more tax exemptions? The government or the people? The middle class man or a company? If a company pollutes a lake, they just got to pay $1,000 or $1 million fine. If you pollute a lake, your ass going to jail. So who is the government setting this up to be beneficial for in 2024? Is it for the common average man who's paying the taxes, or is it for the businesses that are funding the campaigns of the politicians? I'm gonna let y'all do the math. Who gets more benefits under the current system? Companies and corporations or the middle class man? I'm gonna let y'all do the math.
Kind of like using pesticides on the soil. It's going to destroy the soil health for short-term gain, right? And so it's really important, I think, for like revolutionary men and for more traditional men who are going their own way out here, is to think about the concept of ownership outside of political lines, outside of party lines. Yep. And that's the thing, is like, I'm not trying to subscribe to any dogma. I'm trying to think freely about how to create a flourishing humanity. Right? So don't put me in any of your boxes out here. But what I am saying is that the more that man feels ownership in this life, ownership in his spiritual path, ownership of his family, ownership of his community, ownership of his life, the more responsibility he's going to take, the more empowered he's going to become as a man, and the better man he's going to become. Like, it's so contrary to how modern man looks at this concept. We're like, oh, power corrupts, right? It's bullshit. We need ownership in order to feel inspired to overcome ourselves, to live for something larger.
Right.
And the more that feminism rises, like, put man in his place, and the more that the world makes it harder and harder to own land, and the more that the world alienates us from shared social bonds and feeling like we have a stake in the future of our village and our tribe and our nation, we're just going to go our own way.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of men are going to fall into their lowest nature, their most petty nature.
Yep.
Because they don't have the meaning to overcome themselves for a larger project. And this is tragic. So it really comes down to ownership. A lot of people talk about this, and it sounds bad. The man should own his family. In a sense, he should.
It's true.
Like, yeah,
it's
like
true.
He should lead as a wise and loving father, take his wife's input and her wants and needs into account like any good leader would.
Absolutely. And then you understand good leadership, and you can point out when there's bad leadership and when you're being exploited, because you are the leader of your own home. And that's what they want to avoid. When you are in a leadership position, it's easier for you to spot when somebody is not a good leader. So right now, we in a position where the average man sometimes can't even spot a good leader or a bad leader because they don't know what leadership is, because they're not in that role anymore. And yes, a man is supposed to lead his family. I'm sorry. That's just how it's set up. It seems to be the best way in terms of operation order. I don't know how that works. I don't make the rules. I just report it. It seems to be the best operation when it's man, woman, children. Preferably for me, in my opinion, God, man, women, children. That's just what it seems to be. I don't make the rules. I just report them.
This is a round table. But at the end of the day, you got to feel like you have authority, that you are the leader, right? That you have a say in your government, that you have a say in your family, that you have a stake in your community. A little passionate rant there out in the forest, huh? Sometimes I go off. Yeah. My name's Christian. I'm trying to spread awareness about modernity versus the ancient world and try to start men towards a new path of banding together and creating a more traditional yet forward-thinking type of community where we can thrive again. This channel is in service to high culture. Thank you for watching. You can click the link in the description below.
This video is called "The Problem with Society Is Most Men Don't Own Anything." So I'll go ahead and leave a link in the pinned comments down below and in the description to this video. This is a really good video. But my final thoughts is he's absolutely right. I agree with him on everything. I think that men need ownership in order to want to take responsibility and to step up into that role. The reason why our government and almost every single faction don't want us to own anything, you'll own that. Wasn't that the World Economic Forum's motto? You'll own nothing and you'll be happy by 2030, and you can see it happening, but ain't nobody happy. I don't see no happiness from it. I see a lot of people miserable because they don't feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. Because when men feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, they're willing to overcome their own animalistic instincts in order to nurture that thing. And because of the lack of masculine nurturing, the world is plummeting into chaos, and that's just my opinion. The lack of community makes it so that criminality can run rampant. The lack of home ownership. All these things are important, man. Like if you look at it from the base, it's all important and it's all linked together. And I think these issues aren't being talked about because of the addiction to materialism, but there are spiritual aspects that come along with this. There's something about the human spirit that just isn't about material. It just is that way. We need purpose outside of just buying shit. Especially meaningless stuff that doesn't have longevity, and that seems to be what most people own nowadays. They don't even want you to have ownership over your own home. In America, you're not even, you really don't even own your home. Let's just be honest. You're kind of renting it from the government because you got to pay property tax, and if you don't pay that property tax, they gonna come steal it. So in every way possible, they want to undermine your ability to have authority because they know if you don't have authority as a man, you're less likely to take on the responsibility. And if you don't have responsibility as a man, you're not going to make as many good decisions, and you're going to have less commitment to your community, and you're going to be less likely to be willing to die for said community. At this point, it seems like America is just being looted by its corporations and its government working in cahoots for short-term gain of themselves and no longevity at all. And that's reflected in the laws of the family, which is the base of governance. And that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below in the video. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give it an HBO special. That's a Help Brother Out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.